All right, we are live. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Homestead Hangout, where we go live usually every Friday, but today is a different one. We have a special guest, Bennett from Living My Alaska, and you can find it's you and your wife both. The channel is for you and your
Yeah.
wife. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, I find that homesteading in Alaska is really different. Have you lived anywhere else?
I grew up in South Louisiana on a huge farm, rice, soybeans, cattle, pigs, you name it. I think it was something like 1,000 acres of that in South Louisiana. And I come from five generations of homesteaders and farmers in Louisiana. So I think we got sick of the heat and the hurricanes and wanted something different.
Okay. And how long have you
Yeah.
been living in Alaska?
It's been just over 10 years now. As of year 2025, it's been just over 10 years we've lived in Alaska. We've lived in three places in Alaska. We've lived in the southeast, which is the rainforest, Ketchikan area, and then we wanted to try something different outside of the rainforest, so we moved up to Homer, which is a famous homesteading place, right? Homer, Alaska is famous for one TV show on Discovery Channel, Alaska: The Last Frontier. And that made it, I think, 12 seasons, really successful channel about homesteaders in Alaska. And then recently we've moved up to a couple miles north of Anchorage, Alaska. And we have 10 acres here that we're now developing for a little farm and a self-sufficiency and a freedom way of life.
Okay. Is your wife from Louisiana too, or you say
Dawn is
Louisiana?
from Mississippi. Dawn grew up in Northeast Mississippi, Tupelo, Mississippi, birthplace of one very famous musician called Elvis Presley.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
So, um, when you guys moved to Alaska, that had to be a huge, huge change for everything.
Jillian, do you go by Jillian? Is that, yeah?
Jillian, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Jill? Okay, Jill. Listen, Dawn and I are Southerners, right? We never lived in the snow. We did not own warm jackets. I had no idea what sub-zero was like. I could barely find Alaska on a map. And I started watching TV shows about Alaska. And my wife wanted to change. My wife is a registered nurse and she wanted to change from what she was doing. So I started sending her resume all over Alaska without even telling her. Right. And she came home one day from work. I said, "You have a job interview." She says, "Where?" I said, "Somewhere in Alaska." And she said, "Honey, I don't know." I said, "Look, just hear them out." And she said, "What's it for?" I said, "I don't know. I mean, I was just applying for anything, right? I had no idea." And she said, "Honey," she said, "I'm not qualified for that." And I said, "You let them decide." Jill, listen, 45 minutes later, Dawn had a giant pile of money, a giant pile of offers, and full expenses paid, sign-on bonuses, and a very generous pay structure to come to Ketchikan to be a nurse. And that's how we ended up in
Is it
Alaska.
is it easier to find jobs out there, or like more competitive because they want to bring people in, or
Kind of like some other places, Alaska is one of those places that I have some friends that live in beautiful mountain towns in Colorado, and the general joke is, if you want to move to a small Colorado mountain town, you got to bring your job with you. And that is somewhat true for Alaska, with the exception of a few areas. Healthcare is one of those that is in desperate need all over Alaska. Teaching, healthcare, construction, and some of the oil field jobs are in very, very, very high demand. But I can definitely speak for healthcare. My wife, Dawn, now runs a small rural hospital in a place called Dutch Harbor. It's famous for an Alaskan TV show called The Deadliest Catch,
oh,
about the crab
yeah,
fishermen on the crab boats. Well, she's in charge of that hospital right now, and she flies nurses and physicians in on temporary contracts from all over the country. And the pay is very good. It's very competitive, and there are a lot of offers and a lot of
that's really
opportunities.
cool. So when you sent her resume out, did she like had you guys been talking? Maybe I missed that. Were you guys talking about Alaska, or was that just in your mind and you're like,
No, I was sort of giving you the Cliff Notes version, right? The backstory is that I was an executive with a medical research company. My background, when I left the family farm, I went to college and got my education, and somehow I thought I was going to be a big fancy businessman. And after I finished my MBA, I landed a job on Wall Street. I worked as a banker and a stockbroker for several years, and realized a boy from a rice farm in South Louisiana doesn't belong in that environment. I didn't belong there. So I left that. I got into medical sales, where I sold implants and total operating rooms for hospitals all over the country. And I realized again, the planes, trains, and automobiles lifestyle and the big paychecks were not where I belonged. It was just in my blood that I belonged in the dirt. And so my last job was in Switzerland. My wife, I worked for a medical research organization based in Davos, Switzerland. And Dawn and I would travel all over the world for that job. And I got to tell you, Jill, one day I looked down, we were flying out of Zurich, and I looked down at the Alps from the airplane, and I swear if I'd had a parachute, I'd have jumped out. I swore if I could ever get out of that necktie, I'd never put on a necktie again. And so I came home one day from one of those trips, and my wife could see that I was just unhappy. Although we were making giant piles of money, it was very prestigious. She said, "I want you to be happy." And so I basically committed career suicide. Not basically, I literally committed career. And that's what my mentors told me. They said, "Bennett, you're committing career suicide." I said, "Yes, I am." And so we came home, and Dawn, we went from first class plane tickets and first class hotel rooms in exotic places on the planet to shopping at Goodwill and buying stuff at the Salvation Army for our 1-bedroom apartment so Dawn could go back to being a nurse. One of the things I realized about my dear wife is her nursing career is important to her. And she couldn't do that over in Europe. And so she came back and she got a job as a nurse. But one of the things we realized after living in beautiful Swiss Alps is that we no longer wanted to live in a town. We were in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I thought, gosh, I don't want to live this way anymore. There's so much noise, there's so much traffic. It's not what I want to do. So I started looking for what was next for us. And we thought Colorado was where we thought maybe, we'd settle down. Well, Colorado, she had an interview in Colorado. They took too long to make a decision in this beautiful little mountain town in Colorado. And because they took so long to make the decision, we ended up in Alaska.
So I've only been to Alaska.
So that's the backstory.
That was for a red flag event, which is basically like war games for the Navy, right? Like red flag, green flag. It's kind of like so when you're in the military, you have like the good guys and the bad guys, right? So like your team red flag, your team green flag, and a bunch of people will fly in. So you'll have we had French pilots there and German pilots there. I don't even know. I remember there were French pilots there, and they would have the pilots would just do like these simulations of like war games, basically. I was a mechanic, so I didn't I didn't.
Oh, really? Oh my gosh! What a job!
Aviation electronics technician. And
that's incredible. So did they send you to Fairbanks or Anchorage?
Yeah. So we got to see the North Pole.
Okay.
And my last name is Shanahan, so we went into Shenanigans, which is a very classic restaurant. No, I got in trouble with that. Great. Because it was one of the yeoman's 21st birthday, and Shenanigans, we didn't know what it was going to be. It ends up being a strip club, but we didn't know. We just stopped in there because we're like cruising. There's nothing to do, not a lot there. It had like Shenanigans was the nickname they called me. They're like, "Let's go." We walk in and it's a strip club.
Yeah.
And it just so happened to be somebody's birthday. So I called the girls over. I was like, "It's his birthday." Next thing you know, they had him. He had scratches all over him. His chief called me in the next day. We're like, "We don't act like that." Sorry, I didn't do it. So that was
that's fantastic. Yeah, but then I love that.
The North Pole's a really cool place to go too. Like if you want family friendly. But that's kind of my experience with it. And I noticed it's very much like we went in the spring, and it's very much not what people might think it might be.
No.
We're leaving a little bit. Okay. Go get ready. So it's not quite like what people would think it was going to be. It's not like snow ton. It's literally like Buffalo, New York. I noticed like when the snow was melting and you saw the trash all over the ground, from like the winter and everything. But it's very much like, the city is just like a city here in Western New York.
Any other, yeah, northern. That is the beauty. In the wintertime, all the trash gets covered up by all the snow, and it's beautiful. But in the springtime, including my property, I have a massive cleanup effort, and I've forgotten how much work I have to do on this property, because now it's like slowly unwrapping something, right? And now you're like, oh yeah. And every year I find tools on the ground that I lost for the winter, that spent its winter under 5 feet of snow.
Yeah. So one of the things that I keep thinking about, because I watch some of the things on your channel, one of the things that I keep thinking about is, like, I just keep going back to this in my mind, is what you do for the bears, because bears are a common predator there.
Yeah.
We don't have that issue. Like, we have fox, maybe a coyote here and there.
Yeah.
Every once in a while you'll see somebody post on Facebook that a bear was, sighted somewhere, but like, generally speaking, my chickens can be out free ranging, and if I forget to lock them up, I'm okay. You literally have nails poking
Yeah.
out the wrong way, like, for your bear. So
Yeah, that's just the start of the. Yeah, bears in Alaska are a way of life. Even inside city limits, bears can be. They're like raccoon. I joke that they're like raccoons in Louisiana, right? They have no fear, and they will eat anything. And this time of year is probably the most dangerous time, because they're all out of hibernation and they're desperately hungry after 6 months in their dens. We don't dare ever leave food. I don't leave a candy bar in my car ever, because in the middle of the night, a bear might walk up and rip the door open and get to the candy bar.
God.
Right? Bears are known to tear seats out of cars. And it's just a way of life in Alaska. That they look like big, beauty. I love them. I love to watch them. They're amazing creatures. They're big and cuddly. They just look like big puppy dog, except they're not. And a bear can go from just ignoring you to tearing your face off within seconds. They are unbelievably fast creatures, right? This is an animal that can run faster than a racehorse if it wants to, right? And it is literally the Alaskan brown bear is the world's largest land predator, and he's got an attitude to match. And I often question our sanity, that, wait a minute, let me get this straight. There's no way I would walk across, nowhere Africa, unarmed, sleeping in tents. I don't even think I'd sleep in the tent knowing there's lions in the bushes, except a bear is twice the size of a lion and a lot meaner, right? But we sleep in tents all the time. We go hiking all the time in Alaska. And I had bear tracks in my yard about 6 weeks ago. And I was really confused as to why he was up so early, but we had a warm spell, and I have a hunch there was water dripping into his den. So I don't dare walk out of my front door without being armed right now, because I know there are bears around. I've got them on camera.
So have you ever had like a close call, or like neighbors that have had close calls?
Oh, I've had many. Yeah. I've had a few close calls, and I've lived to tell about them. That's why I take it so seriously. By the way, we're avid bear hunters. Spring black bear is my wife's favorite thing to eat in Alaska, of all the things we eat here. And so we consider it a delicacy. Yes, I've had two. So our last place in Homer, Alaska, we had a nice plot of land. I had goats and chickens and all the things you can imagine. The goats were wrapped in an electric fence. And I have big white Great Pyrenees dog, right? And he did his job. He let me know something was wrong. So I go down there to look, and all the goats are faced one way, and they're just frozen, and they're all pointing in the same direction like this, and they won't move. And I don't see anything. So I'm like, well, I don't know what their problem is. So I turn around and I hear something, and I hear the bear chopping its jaw and grunting. And I look, and there's the biggest black bear I've ever seen, I don't know, 15, 20 feet away under a tree, looking straight at me. And he's on top of a hill, and he had me. If he would have jumped, he'd have jumped right on top of me. And so I had my rifle, and I shot him. I didn't even think about it. I just shot him instantly and stopped him, because I had a hunch he was about to jump, and he had that pose. And that's even more terrifying now. So he falls into the long grass, and I'm like, okay, I don't know if he's dead. I don't know if he's injured. I pray I made a good shot, right? So I didn't dare walk into that grass. That was the scariest part. Went back to the house, got my ATV, gave it 30 minutes, and rolled right up on the bear, and he was gone. He was dead. And so then we ate him.
That's like when I took my
Yeah.
my hunting course, they were talking about I've never gone bear
Yeah.
hunting, but they were talking about when you go bear hunting, you have to hit it just right because the ribs are extremely strong. So if you
Yep.
get a rib shot, you don't have a shot. You're just gonna piss it
Yeah.
off. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Um,
Yeah, that's a the bear. The bear's hide is extremely thick. If you ever get close to one and you try to lift its head, you'll realize that you're lifting something size of a basketball full of lead. And their hide can often be covered in mud and sand, and that's basically like a bulletproof vest. You got to make some very good
so
shots on these animals
how
and
much
take it
meat do
very
you like? Have
seriously.
you ever weighed it? Like how much meat you get out of it? Like how much?
Yeah, it depends on the size of the bear, right? So right behind me, I'm going to grab this. So this is a Boone and Crockett record brown black bear
Okay.
skull that my wife shot 2 years ago.
Oh wow.
It's ranked, yeah, it's ranked like somewhere around 250 in terms of size of all black bears shot in Alaska since 1964, since they started keeping the records in the 60s. That bear was almost 7 feet long. Black bear. What did he weigh? I can tell you that his hind leg, when we removed it from the carcass, just his hind leg with the meat on it is something I could barely lift, and it was almost as I'm 6'1", and it was almost as tall as I
That's
was, just the
crazy.
hind
Give me
leg.
1 second.
Said, so
if you don't put your turkey, you have
I'll put my turkey away in a minute. I'm in a live. What? You're over here talking about bears being a threat, and I'm being told I need to put my attack turkey away.
So I've had one other bear incident that was very serious, and that's when we lived in Ketchikan. My Great Pyrenees and I would hike the same trail every day through the woods around near town, and it was never an issue. Never saw. Well, this one day we go bebopping down this trail, and around a corner we come. There's a waterfall and gorgeous, trees, and I hear this noise, and these two trees are banging together right in front of me, and this mama bear has 3 cubs, and she's pushing the cubs up the tree, and she instantly turned at us, and she came down the hill straight at us. My Great Pyrenees stopped her charge. I guess he was just big enough. She'd have killed him. She could have killed him. She was so much bigger than him. My Great Pyrenees is 150 pounds, a world-class dog, and he had no fear. And I was so afraid for him. And he went straight at her, and she stopped her charge, and there they are just chopping at each other like this. And it gave me just enough time to pull my handgun out and reach for him while I pointed the gun at her, and I prayed as I backed him up. That was a dumb thing to do. I should have removed myself from this situation, but I wasn't going to dare leave my Great Pyrenees.
Yeah, you probably would have lost your dog.
So, but he saved. Oh yeah, I'd have lost him. But he saved my life. Because she was coming straight at me. Mother bear with cubs is never something you want to mess with. She was coming straight at me, and she would have not. It was not going to be a false charge. It was clear that what was happening, and it just happens again. I mean, that we hike that trail almost every day for a year, 300 times in this one day, just one day, and that's how it happened.
Well, when we went up to Alaska, we had to have a safety stand down. They didn't talk about bears that I remember, but I remember a huge portion of this safety stand down being reserved to moose. So have you dealt with moose too?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So Mama Moose likes to drop her babies in our yard every springtime. And I have a theory. I think she does this because she thinks the predators who love to eat those baby moose won't come that close to my home. And so every year the mother moose takes over the yard for about 6 weeks until the moose is able to move and he grows up enough that they can move off. But moose, from what I understand, moose kill more people in Alaska than bears. I have a hunch it's because the moose will come into town at your house, hang out in your yard all year round, right? And so you're just exposed to moose, and they're massive. I mean, think about a full-size, full-grown horse with antlers,
Well, they're bigger,
right?
and
they can have an attitude in the. Yeah, generally bigger than. I mean, we're talking 1,400 pounds. right? And the more dangerous of those is the female moose when she's got her little calf, and they can be very dangerous. And we've had a couple instances where moose have charged us, and we've had to move quickly. And there are times when my wife has been late for work because the moose won't move out of the front door. you can walk up to the front door and all you see is a giant brown belly right in your doorway, and the moose is standing sideways.
So is that an excusable absence in Alaska? Like you can call your boss.
Yeah,
like normal.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, yeah, it's just like the world there.
Oh,
okay,
it's absurd.
So what
It is.
livestock do you raise?
Right now we have none. We've just purchased this new property, but so in the past we've been successful with goats in the summer. I've even put pigs in my greenhouse in the winter and let them live in the greenhouse all winter with straw and hay, and I've fed them, and then we process them in the springtime. We've had great success with the big white Brahma chickens, the big white chickens that are pretty winter hardy. Yeah, they slow down on their laying in the winter. I've not had to give them heat in the winter or anything like that, and they've managed quite well. But so that's what we've done in the past. Our plan for this new property is something similar.
Can you keep bees in Alaska?
Yeah, our neighbors have bees. Generally, they don't winter them over, but our neighbors have bees. I don't have bees, but I tap my birch trees every spring. We just finished doing that, and we filmed it. We'll post it soon. So we basically trade birch sap for honey, and so I think I got 30 pints of birch sap syrup finished. Same way you tap a maple tree,
I've never been exposed to birch syrup. Is that does it taste similar to maple syrup or?
No, it's a lot. It reminds me more of molasses. Then it's definitely not like maple syrup. So with maple syrup, it's something like 70-1 in terms of how much you have to reduce it. Birch syrup is so much more expensive and hard to get because it's something like 100-1. So basically 5 gallons of sap out of a tree will give me 5 ounces of syrup. Oh, it's a lot of work.
And then you don't use it like your pancakes and stuff. You use it like molasses.
Yeah, we use it on pancakes and biscuits, and my wife's we tried to make caramel out of it and we failed, but we're gonna try again. It's a darker, richer, it's a more earthy flavor for sure. It's not nearly as sweet as maple.
Yeah. So yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you go and drop them off and come up and go?
No, go. Just go get ready. Do I look like I'm busy right now? You're gonna stop. Get ready, and we will leave in a little bit. Okay. The kids are doing dance. I told them they could do dance this year, and at the end of the year,
Fantastic.
the last 2 weeks after recital, the last 2 weeks are open for anybody to come in for free and try any dance out. So they're trying all of them out. They're like, well, we want to try everything this we like, and I was like,
wonderful.
Okay, I'm not going to be busy.
Oh boy.
This week. Yeah. So yeah. So they're like yesterday we did. Yeah, we did a bunch of them, but I figured why not? Well, one of my kids is doing it. We'll let them all do it.
Sure.
Okay. So if somebody's going to move to Alaska, or if they're talking, like you hear people talking like, oh, I'm going to move to Alaska and live on the frontier and have my home. Like you hear about that all the time. Do you think like anybody that can homestead can do it, or do you think it takes a really special set of skills or a special kind of person? Like, do you think that's something that anybody could do or no?
Yeah. We see, so one of the old homesteaders in Homer that was my neighbor, I always joke with him about all the rich people moving to Alaska, movie stars and musicians. And he laughed. He said, Bennett, that's been happening for 60 years in my life. He said, one good winter, they're all out of here. And he said a new crop will show up a couple years later, and one good winter,
that's exactly what happened with the Homesteading channel. I don't know if you follow Homesteading, but that's exactly what they did. They're like, we're moving to Alaska. And then afterwards, they're like, we're back. We quit.
We're out of here.
Did you see how quick that went?
Alaska's tough. There's a reason there's only 500,000 people in the state, almost 3 times the size of Texas, right?
Do you follow that? Do you follow that YouTube channel?
It's rough.
Yeah. Okay.
A little bit. Listen, let's be accurate. Listen, a year and a half ago, I had no YouTube, no social media, and I had been swearing off social media and YouTube for at least a decade.
What happened?
So I finally surrendered. I've been teaching college courses on a college level, marketing, business, and all that, because that's my background. And for a decade, every time one of my students said, I want to be YouTube famous, I said, pick another career. Now I have to apologize to 500 students.
Yeah. And
because here we are.
How many YouTube subscribers do you have? You've got like 20,000, right?
We just in the last 14 months, we have just over 20,000 subs, and I think we'll probably cross 1 million views
That's
total
funny
this
for
week.
someone that
It's a
swore
big
off
leap.
social media.
Yeah.
So,
so your question about homesteading. So the term homesteading is a loosely used term, right? These days. So the Homestead Act was way back when, where like 100 years ago, and through, I think, the last legal homesteader to the strict use of the term was roughly 1985, I think, where you would come to Alaska, you petition the government, they give you a plot of land to pick from, and then you were required under the law to go out and develop that land under certain conditions, and you were required to live there a certain amount of time, build sustainable buildings, develop the land in certain ways, and then they granted you the land, right? And if you didn't, from what I understand, I just finished some books about one of the last homesteaders, and he wrote about, out of a dozen wannabe homesteaders in the mid 80s, he was the only one who qualified to keep their land after a 3-year period. It was tough, right? Now, we use homesteading today because it's trendy, but to be fair, we're more talking about rural farming, hobby farms, small farms, and stuff like that. We can use homesteading if you want. It's more about anybody can go live in Anchorage, right? It's just another city with all the amenities you want. But if you want to experience Alaska, you've got to go out into the bush country, the back country, small rural towns, or even outside of those towns, like where we live. And that's, if you don't want to do that, then I don't see, at least for me, I don't see much value in living in Alaska if you're not interested in access.
So visit it first before you make that decision.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things we see is that our friends that are realtors tell me every year, thousands of people come up here, and if you have a bluebird week, which is rare, where it's actually beautiful and sunny, I mean, they get inundated with phone calls for people who are like, I want to live here, let's go shop for houses. And then they buy houses, and then they spend one winter here, and they realize how hard it is to live here in the winter. And the next spring, they're like, sell it, we're out of here. And every spring, you have a massive migration out of the state.
Okay. So people go there with big hopes and dreams, and they just realize that it's not really for them. Yeah.
Oh, very much. It's nothing like the TV shows. I joke all the time with my wife about, according to the TV shows, Alaska looks like Hawaii with more trees, and that's not. There's nothing true. We never get a break in Alaska. We go from -40 to deep snow to, we have about a week between deep snow, and then you go into melt, muddy, and then right after the melt starts, the mosquitoes show up. Right. So you don't get a break. I mean, it's always something that wants to beat you down in this place. And we just accept. I surrendered a long time. If I was afraid of being cold, hungry, tired, or afraid, I would just never go outside, because I've surrendered many years ago. I just surrendered to the fact that I'm going to be cold and wet today and pretty miserable, but I'm going to do it anyway. And that's the lifestyle. That's the choice you have to make.
Do you regret it, or is this your thing?
Oh, this is by far one of the reasons I started living my Alaska, was to reach out to people who, like I was a decade ago, stuck in a job that they didn't want to be in, stuck in a traffic jam in some godforsaken city, that looked around and said, man, I've got to make a change in my life. I need a life reset. It's the rural lifestyle is by far the best thing I ever did for my wife, my marriage, my life, and my soul. It was a lifesaver. And that doesn't necessarily have to be Alaska. Alaska was just for us, but upstate New York, Montana, the UP of Michigan, and places like that, you can do this other places, but Alaska is the destination.
That is really cool. That is really cool. I don't want to cut this short, but my kids have reminded me several times that I told them that I'd take them to their hip hop class at 4:30, so I'm going to have to end this. It was great having you on. I'm really glad that you got to come on here. That's amazing. I think that we could sit here and talk a long time about different things about Alaska because it's so cool. For anybody that wants to see his stuff, he has a ton of content on his channel. You can see it there below his name. It's Living My Alaska. You can go and look at his channel, say hi, tell him that you came from over here. There's one of the shorts that I already talked about earlier, but there's one of the shorts that I just can't, like, it's got nails sticking out. It's like, this is what we do for bears. Like, it's just so crazy to think of the differences. So thank you for coming on. I'm sorry that I have to cut it short.
That's okay. Let's do this again because I've got so many questions about what you guys are doing as well. So let's do this again sometime soon. And thank you so much. This has been great fun. I love talking about stuff like this. And it's good to collaborate with other. Being a YouTube creator is a lonely place. It's people who don't create videos on YouTube don't really understand. And it's nice to collaborate with other folks.
That's one of the reasons I started this, because it's really cool to be able to talk. It's like almost like an unofficial mentor program when you talk to other people that are doing things too. Like, you know, that's YouTube kind of does that.
True.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for everybody for coming on. And I will see you guys all later. Lachlan, I know you're coming. I know you're waiting for me to go live again. I will go live later tonight, probably when I like feed the goats or something. Okay.